Halloween, a time of haunting, a time for tales of witches, goblins, and other specters. Washington Irving wrote this famous tale of the ghost of a headless horseman, a creature who haunted Dutch New York after the American Revolution, and what the headless horseman did to Ichabod Crane, the schoolmaster of Sleepy Hollow. The Legend of Sleepy Hollow.
There once lived a schoolmaster of the name of Ichabod Crane, who tarried in Sleepy Hollow for the purpose of instructing the children of the vicinity. He was boarded and lodged at the houses of the farmers, successively a week at a time. He assisted the farmers in the lighter labors of their farms. Our man of letters was peculiarly happy in the smiles of the country damsels, sauntering with a bevy of them along the banks of the mill pond. He had read several books and was a master of Cotton Mather's History of New England Witchcraft, in which he most firmly believed. He would stretch himself on a bed of clover by the brook that whispered by his schoolhouse, and there read Mather's direful tales until dusk. Then wend his way through swamp and stream and awful woodland toward the farmhouse where he would stay. Every sound at that witching hour fluttered his excited imagination. And if a huge blockhead of a beetle came winging against him, he felt that he was struck with a witch's token. He would have passed a pleasant life of it despite his fears, if it weren't for a woman. Katrina Van Tassel, the daughter and only child of a substantial Dutch farmer, was a blooming lass of fresh 18. Ichabod Crane had a foolish heart, more especially after he had visited her in her paternal home. Rich fields of wheat and Indian corn and ruddy fruit. And when he entered the house, the conquest of his heart was complete. And a corner cupboard, knowingly left open, displayed immense treasures of old silver and well-mended china. His only study was how to gain the affections of the peerless daughter of Van Tassel. She had numerous rustic admirers who beset every portal to her heart. Among these, the most formidable was Bram Van Brunt. He was broad-shouldered and double-jointed with short, curly black hair. From his Herculean frame and great powers of limb, he had received the nickname of Bram Bones. He was famed for great knowledge and skill in horsemanship. Bram would have loved open warfare, by single combat, but Ichabod ignored him. This bothered Bram, and he played practical jokes upon his rival, like stuffing up the chimney and smoking out the schoolhouse. On a fine autumnal afternoon, Ichabod, in a pensive mood, sat enthroned on the lofty stool. A kind of buzzing stillness reigned throughout the schoolroom. It was suddenly interrupted by the appearance of a messenger with an invitation to Ichabod to attend a merrymaking, to be held that evening at Mynheer Van Tassel's. The scholars were hurried through their lessons, and the whole school was turned loose an hour before the usual time, so that he could go to the party. In the true style of a cavalier, he borrowed a horse named Gunpowder, a broken-down plow horse that had outlived almost everything but his viciousness. Ichabod was a suitable figure for such a steed. It was toward evening that Ichabod arrived at the mansion of Heer Van Tassel. Bram Bones, however, was the hero of the scene, having come to the gathering on his favorite steed, Daredevil, a creature like himself, full of mettle and mischief. And now, the sound of music from the common room or hall summoned to the dance. Ichabod prided himself upon his dancing. Not a limb nor a fiber of him was idle. The lady of his heart was his partner in the dance, always smiling graciously, while Bram Bones, sorely smitten with love and jealousy, sat brooding by himself in one corner of the room. When the dance was at an end, Ichabod was attracted to a group of older folks who were drawing out long stories about the war. But all this was nothing to the tales of ghosts and apparitions that succeeded. The chief story turned upon the favorite specter of Sleepy Hollow, the headless horseman, who had been heard several times of late, and it was said, tethered his horse nightly among the graves in the churchyard. The tale was told of how old Brower was obliged to get up behind the horsemen, how they galloped until they reached the bridge, when the horseman suddenly turned into a skeleton and sprang away over the treetops. Brom Bones then swore that he'd offered to race the ghost for a bowl of punch and should have won it too. But just as they came to the church bridge, the horseman vanished in a flash of fire. All these tales sank deep in the mind of Ichabod. The revel now gradually broke up. Ichabod only lingered behind to have a tete-a-tete with the heiress, but something must have gone wrong, for after an interval, Ichabod sadly left the party. The hour was as dismal as himself. The night grew darker and darker. The stars seemed to sink deeper in the sky. He had never felt so lonely or dismal. He was, moreover, approaching the very place where many of the scenes of the ghost stories had been laid. His heart began to thump. He summoned up all his resolution and attempted to dash briskly across the bridge. Just at this moment, in the dark shadow of the grave, he beheld something huge, like some gigantic monster ready to spring upon the traveler. "Who are you?" He received no reply. "Who are you?" The shadowy object of alarm put itself in motion and stood right in the middle of the road. There, on rising ground against the sky, it was gigantic in height, muffled in a cloak, and headless. The head, which should have rested on his shoulders, was carried before him on the pommel of the saddle. He rained a shower of kicks and blows upon Gunpowder. Away they dashed. But Gunpowder plunged headlong downhill to Sleepy Hollow. The girths of the saddle gave way, and he felt it slipping from under him, falling to the earth. Old Gunpowder sprang upon the bridge. He thundered over the resounding planks. Ichabod cast a look behind to see if his pursuer should vanish, according to rule, in a flash of fire and brimstone. But the goblin rose in his stirrups and hurled his head. Ichabod dodged, but too late. It encountered his cranium with a tremendous crash. He tumbled headlong into the dust, and Gunpowder, the black steed, and the goblin rider passed by like a whirlwind. The next morning, the old horse was found without his saddle, eating grass at his master's gate. The students assembled at the schoolhouse and strolled idly about the banks of the brook. But no schoolmaster. Only the tracks of horses' hooves were found, deeply dented in the road near the bridge, beyond which was found the hat of the unfortunate Ichabod, and close beside it, a shattered pumpkin. The brook was searched, but the body of the schoolmaster was not to be discovered. Brom Bones soon conducted the blooming Katrina in triumph to the altar. He always burst into a hearty laugh at the mention of the pumpkin. The old country wives, however, who are the best judges of these matters, maintain to this day that Ichabod was spirited away by supernatural means. And it's the favorite story told round the winter evening fire.